boy named Rahul, who had always struggled with keeping focus. He would start something, whether it was a hobby, a project, or even his schoolwork, with so much enthusiasm. But soon his mind would wander, and he'd feel frustrated with himself for not being able to stick with anything long enough to see progress. One day, he discovered a book, The Practicing Mind by Thomas Sterner, and little did he know that book would transform the way he saw his goals and the process of getting there. It wasn't about the end result for Rahul anymore. Instead, it was about practice. He learned that with the right mindset, practice could be a powerful tool, not just for achieving a goal, but for finding satisfaction in the journey itself. The Practicing Mind is more than just a book about mastering a skill. It's a guide to developing patience, focus, and a deeper appreciation for the process of learning. It's a message that resonates with anyone who's ever felt frustrated with their inability to stay focused or committed. Thomas Sterner begins by explaining a crucial concept: the difference between focusing on the end goal and getting lost in the process. Most of us, like Rahul, focus too much on the result, the promotion, the trophy, the finished project. But Sterner reminds us that true mastery comes when we shift our attention to the present moment, to the act of practicing itself, not just the end goal. The mind, by nature, is impatient. It seeks immediate gratification, and this is where many people, including Rahul, struggle. They start a task, but if they don't see immediate results, they lose interest or become disheartened. This book teaches us that the path to mastery is often a long one, filled with small, incremental steps that are easy to overlook but essential to progress. Sterner emphasizes that mastery is not a destination but a journey. When we commit to the process, whether it's practicing a musical instrument, learning a new skill, or working on personal growth, we can start to experience a deeper sense of fulfillment. The idea is to shift from a mindset of, "I'll be happy when I get there," to, "I can find joy in the practice itself." Sterner goes on to introduce the concept of non-attachment to outcomes. Instead of obsessing over whether we're improving or whether we've achieved our goal, we should focus on the small actions that bring us closer to it. This shift in mindset helps us let go of frustration and anxiety and instead embrace the process with an open heart. By focusing on the present moment, we also free ourselves from the mental clutter that often holds us back. The book teaches us that instead of battling distractions, we should recognize them, accept them, and return our focus to the task at hand. This practice of returning our attention to the present is an essential part of building concentration and discipline. Part 2. Rahul, the young boy who had once struggled to focus, was beginning to understand something that had eluded him for years: patience. Every time he practiced, whether it was playing his guitar or working on his studies, he reminded himself to appreciate the small progress he made each day. At first, it was hard to break free from his obsession with the end result, but soon the act of practicing became more enjoyable than the thought of what he would achieve. Rahul started seeing his growth in the process rather than in the destination. In this section of The Practicing Mind, Sterner delves into how we can break free from the negative patterns that sabotage our practice. The book reveals that one of the biggest obstacles to consistent progress is the negative mindset many of us hold. We often find ourselves thinking, "I'm not good enough," or "I'll never improve." And these thoughts become self-fulfilling prophecies. Sterner argues that in order to overcome this, we must first become aware of these thoughts, then replace them with more constructive and realistic beliefs. Breaking free from negative thought patterns. A significant part of the Practicing Mind is dedicated to teaching us how to catch and redirect negative thoughts. Sterner suggests that we practice awareness. Simply becoming aware of our self-critical thoughts is the first step in turning them around. For instance, instead of thinking, "I'll never get this right," we can reframe the thought to, "I'm learning," and mistakes are a natural part of the process. This simple shift in mindset opens the door to a more productive approach to practice. Sterner's approach is to treat negative thoughts not as enemies to be vanquished, but as signals that there is a fear or belief holding us back. By noticing and acknowledging these thoughts without judgment, we can begin to change how we respond to them. This kind of awareness and self-reflection helps in building resilience, allowing us to stay committed to the practice even when progress feels slow. The power of patience. Another crucial aspect of the Practicing Mind is patience. Sterner emphasizes that many of us are conditioned to want instant results. Whether it's learning a new skill or achieving a specific goal, we live in a culture that celebrates quick fixes and rapid success. However, Sterner points out that true mastery and fulfillment come only when we allow ourselves the time to develop. This concept is a bit like learning to ride a bike. At first, it feels impossible, and we might want to give up. But the more we practice, the better we get. The more patient we are with ourselves, the easier it becomes. Patience is not about waiting for something to happen, but about enjoying the journey even when the destination feels distant. The importance of consistency in practice. Sterner stresses that consistency is the key to progress. It's not about practicing for hours at a time or being perfect. It's about showing up every day and committing to the small steps. Even just 5 minutes of practice each day is far more effective than trying to cram all your learning into one long session. Rahul realized that it wasn't the amount of time he spent practicing that mattered, it was the regularity. Each small step he took in his practice, no matter how insignificant it seemed, was adding up over time. This consistency leads to gradual improvement and eventually mastery. The book's central message is clear: mastery doesn't happen overnight, and trying to rush the process often leads to frustration and burnout. It's much more effective to focus on steady, consistent practice that, over time, leads to the results we want. Non-perfectionism. Embracing imperfection. One of the most powerful lessons in the practicing mind is the concept of non-perfectionism. Sterner encourages readers to let go of the need to be perfect. Often we are held back by the fear of making mistakes, which creates a barrier to progress. But the truth is, mistakes are an essential part of learning. Sterner advocates for embracing imperfection. In fact, he suggests that rather than seeing mistakes as setbacks, we should view them as opportunities for growth. Every time we make a mistake, we learn something new. By focusing on the journey and being okay with imperfection, we free ourselves from the pressure of needing to be perfect and instead allow ourselves the freedom to practice without fear. Part 3, Rahul, now feeling more confident in his practice, began to notice something remarkable. As he started focusing on the process rather than the end result, he found himself less frustrated and more relaxed. He embraced his mistakes and understood that they were part of the learning process. But even more importantly, he discovered a shift in how he approached challenges. Where once he would have given up after a setback, now he pressed forward with renewed determination, understanding that growth was a gradual and ongoing process. It wasn't about perfection, it was about progress. As we continue through the practicing mind, Sterner shifts focus to an essential theme: the importance of cultivating a growth mindset. This part of the book teaches us how to view challenges not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities to expand our abilities. By fostering this mindset, we can approach difficulties with a sense of curiosity and resilience, which is a crucial part of effective practice. The growth mindset, embracing challenges. Sterner emphasizes that a growth mindset is the foundation of successful practice. It's the belief that intelligence, skills, and abilities can be developed through effort and perseverance. People with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to improve, rather than threats to their self-worth. This contrasts with a fixed mindset, which holds that skills and intelligence are innate and unchangeable. A growth mindset is a powerful tool in overcoming obstacles. Instead of avoiding difficult tasks or feeling discouraged by setbacks, we embrace them. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to learn and grow. Rahul began applying this mindset in his life. Whenever he faced a challenge, instead of giving up, he took it as a chance to push himself further. Even when things didn't go as planned, he knew that with effort, he would improve over time. Sterner explains that when we approach our practice with a growth mindset, we no longer see mistakes as failures. Instead, we recognize them as feedback, valuable information about where we need to focus our attention in order to improve. This shift in perspective is transformative. Rather than being defeated by difficulties, we become motivated to keep going. Emotional resilience and the role of patience in overcoming setbacks. Emotional resilience plays a significant role in practice. Sterner discusses how important it is to be emotionally equipped for the ups and downs of the journey. Practice isn't always smooth sailing. There are times when progress seems slow and we may feel frustrated or discouraged. However, Sterner teaches that it's not about avoiding these emotional lows. It's about learning to deal with them constructively. Rahul, in his practice, learned that setbacks were inevitable, but they didn't define him. He could choose how to respond. Instead of reacting negatively to failure, he learned to stay calm, regroup, and continue practicing. Over time, he built emotional resilience, which made him more adept at handling frustration and disappointment. Stirner advocates for patience in moments of struggle. Instead of seeking instant gratification or a quick fix, we should trust the process. Mastery takes time, and it's through consistent effort and the ability to weather emotional storms that we ultimately grow. Practicing patience not only strengthens our skills, but also fortifies our emotional resilience. The role of focus in mastery. Another core principle of the practicing mind is the importance of focus. Focus is the key to efficient practice. Without it, our efforts become scattered and progress slows. Stirner advises that in order to practice effectively, we must train ourselves to concentrate on the task at hand. One of the most powerful techniques Stirner introduces is single tasking. In a world full of distractions, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the need to juggle multiple tasks at once. But true progress comes when we direct our full attention to a single task, shutting out all distractions. Rahul too had to learn this lesson. He often found himself distracted by his phone or other things in his environment, but he made a conscious effort to focus on one thing at a time. By doing so, he began to see faster improvement and greater satisfaction in his practice. Focus, according to Stirner, is like a muscle. The more we practice focusing, the stronger our ability to concentrate becomes. Just as we build physical muscle through exercise, we build mental focus through dedicated, mindful practice. This sustained attention not only accelerates our progress, but also deepens our engagement in the process. The power of small, consistent efforts. Stirner also teaches the importance of making small, consistent efforts rather than trying to make huge leaps in progress. This principle is particularly helpful when we feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of our goals. Rather than focusing on a massive end goal, we should break it down into manageable steps. These small efforts accumulate over time and lead to significant improvement. Rahul, for example, didn't focus on becoming an expert guitarist overnight. He started with short practice sessions, focusing on one chord or one technique at a time. As he made small, consistent efforts, he noticed gradual improvement. With each passing day, he built on what he had learned, and over time, the progress became more noticeable. Stirner encourages us to resist the urge to push too hard or expect too much too soon. The key is to trust that steady, incremental progress leads to long-term success. Part 4. As Rahul continued his practice, he began to notice something interesting. His mind, once filled with distractions and impatience, now seemed to be more focused. When he sat down to play his guitar, it wasn't just about playing the chords correctly or moving faster. He became aware of each finger placement, the sound of each note, and the joy in simply playing. The distractions that once pulled him away from his practice seemed to fade into the background. He found that the more he focused on the present moment, the more effortless his practice felt. His patience had paid off, and he was now immersed in the process, no longer obsessed with the outcome, but enjoying the act of learning itself. In this part of the practicing mind, Thomas Stirner shifts focus to one of the most crucial aspects of mastering any skill: mental discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as rigid control, but Stirner defines it as the ability to stay present and fully engaged in the task at hand. It's about training our mind to stay focused, even when distractions are all around us. The power of mental discipline. Mental discipline is essential for overcoming the challenges that inevitably arise during the practice process. Stirner explains that practicing effectively requires not only the willingness to practice, but also the ability to maintain focus throughout the process. This is where many people fail. They may start with enthusiasm, but they lose interest or become distracted as time goes on. Stirner compares mental discipline to a muscle that needs regular training. The more we practice focusing our attention, the stronger our discipline becomes. It's easy to get sidetracked by 100 different things: emails, notifications, thoughts of the future. But true mastery comes from the ability to bring our attention back to the present moment, learning to stay in the present moment. One of the key lessons in the practicing mind is the importance of being present in the moment. Too often we get caught up in worrying about the future or ruminating on past mistakes. This mental clutter prevents us from truly engaging with the task at hand. Rahul, as he continued practicing, learned to quiet the noise in his mind. He stopped thinking about how far he had to go and instead focused on the small, manageable steps that made up each practice session. This shift in mindset allowed him to enter a state of flow, a state where time seemed to disappear and the task itself became all-consuming. Stirner explains that this is the magic of being present. When we are fully engaged, the process of practice becomes enjoyable. We stop focusing on the results and instead savor the experience. This mindset shift is powerful because it frees us from the frustration that often comes from thinking too much about the end goal. Avoiding the pitfalls of distraction. In today's fast-paced world, distractions are everywhere. The internet, social media, and constant notifications pull our attention away from the task at hand. However, Stirner argues that distractions are not just external, they can also be internal, such as our wandering thoughts and emotions. To truly practice effectively, we must learn how to resist these distractions and stay focused. Stirner introduces practical techniques for dealing with distractions. One method is to set specific boundaries around your practice time. For example, Rahul would turn off his phone, find a quiet space, and set a timer for a certain amount of time to focus solely on his guitar practice. These simple steps helped him block out external distractions and focus completely on his work. But it's not just about eliminating external distractions, we must also learn to control our internal distractions. Stirner suggests that when our mind starts to wander, we gently bring our attention back to the task without judgment. This takes practice, but over time, our mental discipline strengthens, developing self-control and patience. Self-control is another vital component of effective practice. It's easy to get discouraged when progress feels slow or when we feel the urge to give up. Stirner emphasizes that developing patience is key to sticking with our practice, even when the going gets tough. Rahul faced this challenge many times. There were days when his progress felt minimal and he wanted to give up. But he kept reminding himself of the bigger picture. His goal wasn't to become perfect overnight, but to steadily improve with consistent effort. By practicing patience and self-control, Rahul began to notice that his small, consistent efforts were paying off in the long run. Stirner stresses that patience isn't just about waiting. It's about continuing to work even when we don't see immediate results. It's the ability to persist day after day, even when it feels like we're not getting anywhere. This kind of self-control is what separates those who achieve mastery from those who give up along the way. The importance of enjoying the process. Throughout the book, Stirner emphasizes the importance of enjoying the process of practice itself. Many people focus so much on the end goal that they forget to appreciate the journey. However, true fulfillment comes from the act of practicing, not from reaching the destination. Rahul's guitar playing, for instance, became more enjoyable when he let go of the pressure to perform perfectly. He began to take pleasure in each small improvement, whether it was mastering a chord or playing a new song. This mindset shift transformed his approach to practice and made the entire process more enjoyable. Stirner encourages readers to savor the small victories along the way. Every small improvement is a sign of progress, and by celebrating these moments, we create positive reinforcement that motivates us to keep going. Part 5. As Rahul continued his practice, something unexpected happened. His guitar playing, once a challenge, began to feel almost natural. His fingers moved with ease and his mind felt clearer. He had learned to embrace the process, focusing on each note, each chord, without the overwhelming pressure to be perfect. It wasn't that he had reached the level of mastery he had hoped for. Rather, it was the fact that he had learned to be at peace with where he was, enjoying the process without constantly rushing toward the end result. He realized that this was the true beauty of practice, not just the skill gained, but the sense of fulfillment that came from being fully present, moment by moment. The guitar was no longer a source of frustration, but a constant companion, helping him discover more about his own mind, patience, and growth. In this section of the Practicing Mind, Stirner introduces the concept of mindfulness as a central component of the practice process. Mindfulness is the act of being fully present and aware in the moment, without judgment or distraction. This mindfulness approach plays a crucial role in both the quality of our practice and the overall experience of learning. Mindfulness and the practice process. Mindfulness, according to Stirner, is the ability to focus on the present moment without letting distractions or judgments interfere. In the context of practice, this means fully immersing ourselves in the task at hand, whether it's learning a new skill, playing an instrument, or working toward any other goal. Rahul began to experience this as he played his guitar. In the beginning, his mind would wander to future concerns. When would he be good enough? When would he see real progress? But as he practiced, he realized that the true progress happened when he stopped thinking about the future and focused solely on the present moment. Every chord became an opportunity to practice mindfulness, and in that awareness, he found not only growth but a sense of peace. Stirner explains that mindfulness in practice is about fully engaging with each step. Instead of rushing through the process to get to the result, we learn to appreciate each moment. We give ourselves permission to fail and learn without being harsh on ourselves. This creates a space where growth can happen organically, learning to let go of the need for perfection. Another key aspect of mindfulness is letting go of the constant need for perfection. Stirner points out that many of us are conditioned to seek perfection in everything we do, which can create unnecessary stress and frustration. In practice, however, perfection is not the goal. The goal is growth, and growth comes from consistent effort and the willingness to make mistakes. Rahul, for example, let go of the need to be perfect in his guitar playing. At first, he was obsessed with playing flawlessly. But as time passed, he realized that the real joy came from the act of playing itself, not from how perfectly he could play. By releasing the pressure of perfection, he opened himself up to enjoying the learning process, and this in turn made him better. Stirner teaches that perfectionism can be paralyzing. It often prevents us from fully engaging with the process because we are too focused on avoiding mistakes. By practicing mindfulness and accepting our imperfections, we remove the self-imposed pressure and allow ourselves to learn more freely. The role of patience in mindfulness. Patience is an integral part of mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness requires us to accept that mastery takes time. We cannot rush the process, and we must learn to be patient with ourselves. Stirner stresses that patience is not about waiting for something to happen. It's about allowing things to unfold at their natural pace. For Rahul, patience became a valuable ally. He no longer tried to rush his progress. Instead, he allowed himself the time to grow. He became more comfortable with the process, trusting that improvement would come gradually. By practicing patience, he was able to stay present and engaged without feeling frustrated or anxious about the future. Stirner points out that this patience is a form of active engagement. It's not a passive waiting game. Rather, it's the ability to stay focused and committed to the process, even when progress is slow or difficult. Patience allows us to enjoy the journey, knowing that it's the consistent, small efforts that will lead to long-term success. Mindfulness as a tool for overcoming frustration. Frustration is a natural part of the practice process, but mindfulness can help us deal with it more effectively. Stirner discusses how mindfulness can be a powerful tool for managing frustration. Instead of getting angry or upset when things don't go as planned, we can use mindfulness to observe our emotions without being controlled by them. When Rahul felt frustrated with his progress, he used mindfulness to. Part 6, Rahul's guitar playing began to transform in ways he hadn't imagined. Each practice session, though still filled with mistakes, became a space for growth and discovery. As he immersed himself in each note, he began to notice something extraordinary. His frustration started to melt away. The sound of the guitar, once just a collection of notes, now felt like a conversation between him and the instrument. His focus on the present moment allowed him to enjoy each step of the journey, no matter how small. He stopped looking at the end result and started enjoying the process itself. But it wasn't just the guitar that changed. Rahul began to apply the same mindset to other areas of his life. His relationships, his schoolwork, and his overall approach to life became more relaxed. He was no longer obsessed with rushing to the end goal. Instead, he started savoring the experience of getting there. In this section of The Practicing Mind, Thomas Stirner dives deeper into the concept of persistence and resilience. He introduces the idea that growth is a gradual process, and we must learn to maintain our focus on the journey rather than the destination. It is here that he addresses how we can stay motivated and continue practicing even when the results are not immediately visible. The role of persistence in practice. One of the central ideas in this part of the book is the importance of persistence. Stirner emphasizes that consistent effort over time leads to mastery. He explains that the key to developing persistence is to stay focused on the process rather than the outcome. In the early stages of learning something new, it's easy to become discouraged when progress is slow, but by remaining persistent and continuing to practice, the results will inevitably come. Rahul's experience is a perfect example of this persistence. At first, he felt frustrated because he wasn't improving as quickly as he hoped. But by focusing on the process and committing to practice each day, he eventually started to see progress. This shift in mindset, choosing persistence over frustration, became the key to his success. He learned to trust the process even when the results weren't immediately apparent. Sterner explains that persistence is not about forcing yourself to continue when you feel like giving up. It's about cultivating a mindset that understands growth takes time and requires consistent, patient effort. In practice, persistence allows us to stay committed even when we don't see immediate results. Resilience, overcoming setbacks. Resilience plays a crucial role in the practice process. Sterner describes resilience as the ability to bounce back from setbacks and keep going. Setbacks are inevitable in any learning journey, whether it's a missed note on the guitar or a failure to meet a deadline. What matters most is how we respond to these setbacks. For Rahul, setbacks were a part of the learning process. There were days when his guitar playing felt like it wasn't improving, or when he couldn't quite get the rhythm right. But instead of giving up, he chose to view these setbacks as opportunities to learn. By developing resilience, Rahul was able to keep going, even when things weren't going as planned. Sterner highlights that setbacks can be valuable teachers. They show us where we need to improve and give us the chance to learn from our mistakes. Rather than letting setbacks discourage us, we can use them to build resilience and perseverance. By doing so, we stay committed to the process, no matter how challenging it may seem. The power of small wins. As Rahul continued to practice, he began to experience small wins that kept him motivated. Sterner stresses that these small victories are incredibly important in the practice process. While the end goal may seem distant, the small wins along the way provide a sense of accomplishment and motivation to continue. For Rahul, a small win might have been hitting a difficult chord perfectly, or playing a piece of music with greater ease. These little successes built up over time, creating a sense of progress and satisfaction. Sterner explains that by focusing on these small wins, we can maintain our enthusiasm and energy throughout the learning process. Small wins also help shift our focus away from the end result. When we recognize and celebrate small achievements, we stop obsessing over the bigger picture and start enjoying the journey itself. This shift in perspective is vital for long-term success, as it allows us to stay motivated even when the road ahead seems long. The importance of consistency. Consistency is another key theme in the practicing mind. Sterner emphasizes that success comes not from occasional bursts of effort, but from consistent, daily practice. Consistency allows us to build momentum and make steady progress, even if the results are not immediately visible. Rahul learned this lesson when he started practicing guitar every day, even if it was only for a short period. It wasn't about practicing for hours on end, but about making it a consistent part of his routine. By practicing consistently, Rahul was able to improve steadily, and over time he began to notice significant progress. Sterner explains that consistency doesn't mean perfection. It simply means showing up and doing the work, no matter how small the effort may seem. Over time, consistency compounds and the results become more evident. The key is to commit to the process and trust that progress will come, one step at a time. Patience in the face of slow progress. In this section, Sterner reminds us that growth often happens at a slower pace than we expect. It's easy to get discouraged when we don't see quick results, but patience is essential. Rahul's experience illustrates this well. He had to learn to be patient with his progress, knowing that mastery was a long-term process. Sterner encourages readers to embrace the slow pace of progress and to avoid getting discouraged when things take longer than expected. By accepting the natural rhythm of growth, we can stay focused on the present and continue practicing with dedication and patience. Rahul learned that every step forward, no matter how small, was part of the journey toward mastery. It was through this patience and persistence that he was able to continue improving, even when it felt like things weren't changing fast enough. Part 7. Rahul's guitar playing was no longer a source of frustration. It had become a joy, and he was amazed by how much progress he had made. However, the true test came when he decided to join a band with his friends. While he felt confident in his personal playing, he now had to learn how to practice with a group, which was a whole new challenge. At first, it was difficult. The rhythm wasn't as smooth and the coordination between the group members was off. But Rahul knew he had to stay patient and persistent. Slowly, through constant practice and attention to the process, the band began to click. They weren't just practicing to get better at music, they were practicing to be better as a group. Rahul realized that this experience was a perfect example of how practice, when done with intention and focus, could transcend individual improvement and extend to a group effort. By staying connected to the present moment and focusing on each small step, the band's progress felt effortless. And in doing so, they learned that progress was not always about pushing through struggles. It was about embracing them as part of the journey. In this part of the practicing mind, Thomas Sterner delves into how to maintain focus and sustain your practice over the long term, especially when faced with boredom, distractions, and external pressures. He provides practical tools for maintaining engagement in the process, even when the novelty of learning something new starts to wear off. Focusing on the process, not the end goal. One of the core concepts Sterner focuses on in this section is the importance of maintaining focus on the process rather than the end result. It's easy to become fixated on achieving a goal, but Sterner reminds us that the true value lies in how we approach the practice itself. Whether we're learning an instrument, a sport, or any new skill, the journey is where growth happens. Rahul, now in the band, had to learn to focus not just on his individual skill, but on how he was contributing to the group dynamic. He had to find a way to enjoy each moment of the practice, even when it felt monotonous or slow. Sterner's message is clear. The process is where mastery begins and ends, not the achievement of the goal itself. Sterner also suggests that focusing on the process leads to a deeper connection with what we are learning. Instead of rushing toward the goal, we begin to savor the small moments of progress. By immersing ourselves in the process, we experience learning on a much deeper level, which enhances both the enjoyment and effectiveness of practice, dealing with distractions and boredom. Another key theme in this part is the inevitable experience of boredom and distraction during the practice process. Sterner explains that it's natural for our minds to wander, especially when the activity starts to feel repetitive. This is where many people give up, as they begin to believe that if they're not feeling excitement or challenge, they're not improving. Sterner encourages us to embrace boredom as part of the learning process. He explains that boredom isn't a sign of failure, it's simply a signal that we've moved beyond the initial stages of novelty and are now in the more challenging part of learning, where growth truly happens. Rahul had to confront this in his own practice. Playing the same song over and over might have felt boring at times, but he learned to embrace the repetition. It wasn't about finding excitement in each note. It was about building the foundation for something greater. Sterner suggests a technique called mindful repetition, which is the practice of being fully present with each repetition. Instead of rushing through the task, we focus on the small details of the action. In Rahul's case, he might have focused on the subtle shifts in his fingers as he played the guitar, or the way his body adjusted with each movement. By being present in the moment, he made even the most repetitive practices meaningful and effective, staying engaged with long-term practice. As Rahul continued to practice with his band, he learned that staying engaged with long-term practice requires a shift in mindset. Sterner explains that one of the keys to maintaining motivation over the long term is setting micro goals. These small goals provide a sense of achievement and help us stay engaged in the practice process. For example, instead of focusing solely on becoming an expert guitarist, Rahul set smaller goals like mastering a specific chord progression or playing through a particular section of a song. These micro goals provided him with clear markers of progress and kept him motivated to keep going, even on days when he didn't feel like practicing. Sterner also stresses that it's important to celebrate small successes along the way. Recognizing these milestones, no matter how small, helps us stay committed to the process. It reminds us that improvement is happening, even if it's not immediately obvious. The power of awareness in practice. Another important concept that Sterner discusses is the role of awareness in practice. Being aware of our thoughts and emotions during practice is key to staying focused and engaged. Rahul learned this when he started noticing the difference in his mindset during band rehearsals. On days when he was fully present, he played better and felt more in sync with the group. But on days when his mind was distracted or frustrated, the music didn't flow as smoothly. Stirner encourages readers to develop a heightened sense of awareness during practice. This awareness is not just about noticing our mistakes, but about being conscious of our mental and emotional state as we practice. By becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings, we can adjust our approach and continue to make progress. The importance of flexibility. Stirner emphasizes that, while consistency is key, it's equally important to remain flexible in our approach. There will be times when our routine needs to change or when we encounter obstacles that prevent us from practicing in our usual way. Being flexible allows us to adapt to these situations and continue moving forward. For Rahul, this meant adjusting his practice routine to accommodate the schedules of his band members. There were times when they had to rehearse later than expected, or when some members couldn't make it to practice. Instead of getting frustrated, Rahul learned to adapt and keep his focus on the process, no matter the circumstances. Stirner points out that flexibility is not about abandoning goals or routines. It's about finding ways to work around challenges without losing sight of the bigger picture. By remaining flexible, we can keep the practice process going, even when life throws us off course. Part 8. Rahul's band had now started to perform live, and while his skill as a guitarist had grown, he soon realized that performing under pressure was a whole new challenge. He was no longer just focused on perfecting the guitar riffs, but now had to manage the stress and nerves that came with a live audience. At first, he struggled with stage fright. Every time he stepped onto the stage, his mind raced, and his hands felt like they were freezing up. However, he remembered everything he had learned from his practice, the importance of staying in the present moment. Instead of getting lost in his nerves or worrying about the outcome, Rahul focused on the music, one note at a time. His practice had prepared him for this very moment. Each performance became an opportunity to deepen his connection to the music and to his own self-discipline. Over time, he realized that performing was not about perfection. It was about being present, connecting with the audience, and enjoying the process of sharing the music he loved. In this part of the practicing mind, Thomas Stirner takes us deeper into the philosophy of being present and practicing mindfulness, especially when faced with high-pressure situations. The key message here is that no matter how well we've practiced, the ability to stay focused and calm in the moment is what separates great performers from the rest. Embracing the present moment in high-pressure situations. One of the most important lessons in this section is the idea of embracing the present moment, especially when under pressure. Stirner explains that as we progress in our practice, we often face situations where the stakes feel higher, such as performing in front of others or taking a test. In these moments, it's easy to become overwhelmed by anxiety or the fear of failure. Rahul on stage was a perfect example of this experience. He had spent months learning and practicing, but in front of an audience, his mind was clouded with doubts. However, by focusing on the present moment, on playing the music, on the feel of the guitar in his hands, on the rhythm of the band, he was able to calm his nerves and perform at his best. Stirner emphasizes that this is the true power of mindfulness in practice. Instead of letting external pressures dominate our thoughts, we must train ourselves to remain centered in the present moment. This allows us to stay focused on what we can control, our actions, rather than worrying about things outside of our influence, like the outcome or how others perceive us. The role of self-talk in practice. A key tool that Stirner discusses in overcoming the mental barriers we face during practice and performance is self-talk. Our internal dialogue plays a massive role in shaping our experience of practice. Negative or self-critical thoughts can undermine our confidence and progress, while positive, encouraging thoughts can help us stay focused and engaged. Rahul learned to shift his self-talk from being overly critical to more encouraging. Instead of saying, "I'm going to mess this up," he began to tell himself, "I've practiced this. I can handle this." This shift allowed him to manage the pressure of performing while still giving his best. Stirner suggests that by practicing positive self-talk during our everyday practice, we can develop a mindset that helps us perform at our peak during high-pressure situations. Stirner also recommends using affirmations or mantras to guide our practice. These short, positive statements help to quiet the negative voice in our head and refocus us on the task at hand. For Rahul, a simple mantra like, "I'm in the moment and I'm ready," helped him reframe his nerves into excitement and confidence. Dealing with performance anxiety. Performance anxiety is a common issue that many people face, whether it's during a public speaking event, a musical performance, or even a job interview. Stirner acknowledges that anxiety is a natural response to situations where we feel judged or evaluated. However, he encourages us not to try to suppress our anxiety, but to accept it as part of the experience. Rahul's story is a great example of this. When he first started performing, he felt intense anxiety, but instead of trying to push those feelings away, he allowed himself to feel nervous. By accepting his anxiety, he was able to move beyond it and focus on what truly mattered, his performance and the connection with his audience. Stirner teaches that when we accept our emotions without judgment, we take away their power to control us. He also notes that practice itself can be a remedy for performance anxiety. The more we practice, the more we build confidence in our abilities. This confidence helps to mitigate anxiety during high-pressure situations because we trust in the work we've put in and the progress we've made. As Rahul's guitar playing improved, so did his confidence in performing, which eventually lessened his anxiety. Mastering the moment through focus and discipline. Stirner highlights that the ability to perform well under pressure isn't just about practice, it's about how well we can focus on the task at hand while ignoring distractions. When we are in a high-pressure situation, our attention is often pulled in many directions. The key to overcoming this is to discipline our minds to stay focused on what is most important at that moment. Rahul's ability to focus on the music despite the chaos of the live performance was a result of his disciplined practice. By consistently training himself to stay present during every rehearsal, he was able to carry that same focus into his performances. This is a powerful reminder that the practice we do in private is what ultimately shapes our ability to perform in public. Stirner suggests that one way to master focus during high-pressure situations is to practice in situations that simulate pressure. For example, musicians can practice performing in front of friends or family, or public speakers can rehearse in front of a small group. By gradually increasing the level of pressure, we train ourselves to stay calm and focused, even when the stakes are higher. The power of detachment from results. Another essential idea that Stirner explores is the power of detaching ourselves from the results of our efforts. This does not mean that we shouldn't care about the outcome, but rather that we should avoid letting the result dictate our self-worth or enjoyment of the process. When we become overly attached to the outcome, whether it's winning a competition or receiving praise, we lose sight of what really matters, the practice itself. Rahul experienced this firsthand when he started to let go of the pressure to perform perfectly, and instead focused on enjoying the process of playing music. His performances became more authentic and enjoyable because he was no longer obsessed with getting everything right. Stirner encourages us to detach ourselves from external validation and instead find joy in the act of practicing, regardless of the outcome. 9 months had passed. Rahul's journey from frustration to fulfillment was now more than just about the guitar. It was a reflection of his inner transformation. One day, while teaching a younger student who reminded him of his old self, impatient, distracted, desperate to master the guitar overnight, Rahul paused and smiled. He saw clearly what he had once been. He didn't scold or rush the student. Instead, he shared a simple truth. The joy isn't in finishing the song, it's in playing it, one note at a time. The boy looked confused, but Rahul knew that one day he'd understand, just like he did. Because the practicing mind wasn't just about learning music, it was about learning life. In this final stretch of the practicing mind, Thomas Stirner moves beyond techniques and into the deeper philosophy that underlies a fulfilling and focused life. It's about the kind of person you become through practice, not just what you're trying to achieve. The practice mind as a way of life. Stirner makes it clear, the concepts in this book are not just for athletes, musicians, or students. They apply to everyone. No matter what your pursuit, parenting, business, fitness, writing, meditation, the quality of your experience depends on your relationship with practice. This is where many people miss the mark. They treat practice as a means to an end, something to rush through or escape from as fast as possible. But Stirner argues that practice is the end. It's not a waiting room for success. It is success. Because the most peaceful, productive, and purposeful people are those who have embraced the process itself. In a world obsessed with quick results and instant gratification, this mindset is radical. But it's also incredibly freeing, because if the value lies in the practice, not the result, then you never have to wait to feel fulfilled. You don't need to accomplish some big goal before you can enjoy your day. You simply need to show up, pay attention, and do your work moment by moment. The illusion of the end. Goal. Stirner warns us about a dangerous illusion, the belief that once we arrive, we'll finally be happy. This illusion keeps us anxious, always running towards something and never enjoying the present moment. But what happens when we reach the goal? Usually we move the finish line. New goals arise, the cycle continues. He writes that fulfillment doesn't come from achieving the goal, it comes from the state of mind we cultivate while working toward it. The practicing mind teaches us that we don't need to strive for peace. We just need to practice being peaceful while we work. When you adopt this mindset, something magical happens. Your goals no longer control you. You set them to give direction, but your happiness is rooted in your daily process. The pressure to rush disappears. You give your full self to each step. That's when your progress accelerates, ironically by slowing down. Developing patience and inner stillness. Stirner touches on a powerful benefit of practice, inner stillness. In a world full of noise, distractions, and speed, cultivating stillness is almost revolutionary. And yet, it's the key to clear thinking, deep creativity, and emotional strength. Through consistent, present-moment practice, whether it's meditation, writing, fitness, or something else, you train your mind to not react, to observe, to choose your response. You're no longer controlled by emotions, distractions, or external chaos. Rahul, through music, had learned to slow down internally, even when life was moving fast around him. That stillness made him not just a better guitarist, but a calmer friend, a more patient teacher, and a more thoughtful human being. Stirner emphasizes patience is power, and patience can be practiced. Process versus product, the ultimate shift. The final, most transformative message of the book is this: live in the process, not for the product. This is more than a productivity hack. It's a philosophy of life. When we live for the product, the finished book, the perfect performance, the final grade, we're always in a state of not yet. We never feel whole. But when we live in the process, when we give ourselves completely to what we're doing right now, we become fully alive. Stirner writes that this is how we reclaim joy, how we stop measuring our worth by what we've done, and instead find meaning in how we do things. This shift is subtle but life-changing. It means you can enjoy cleaning your room, writing a report, practicing an instrument, not because you love the task itself, but because you've learned to bring presence, focus, and intention to anything. And in that, you find peace. Final lessons and takeaways. Practice is a mindset, not just an activity. You can bring the practicing mind to anything you do. Detach from the goal. Let it guide you, but don't let it own your happiness. Live in the now. Each moment is a chance to grow, enjoy, and engage with life fully. Stillness is strength. Through patient, present practice, you build a calm inner world no matter what's happening outside. Joy lives in the process. Learn to love the doing, not just the result. So next time you find yourself rushing, frustrated that you're not there yet, pause. Breathe. Remember Rahul. Remember that every master was once a beginner who chose to keep showing up. And remember Thomas Stirner's greatest gift in this book. Peace, mastery, and fulfillment aren't waiting for you at the finish line. They're already here, in this step, this breath, this moment. That's the practicing mind. And it's a practice worth beginning today.